All right, we're live. So, I've been working on some really cool tooling around prototyping with Quasar, specifically some tightly integrated stuff with Vue, especially around auth and working with a fake backend. So this is great for prototyping because rather than building a backend, we can basically use the user's computer as the backend. So that's too much talk. Let's just go ahead and dive right in and I'll show you what I mean. And basically, I want to build as many apps as I can this year using these concepts so that we have lots of examples of Quasar being used, and it gives people a better idea of how they can use this framework. Okay, so pnpm create Quasar to get started, app with Quasar CLI, and let's call this shared to do. So it's going to be a to-do app, but I wanted to go one step further and make it so that you could have accounts that you log in with, and then you can share to-dos amongst those accounts. Okay, so we'll use Vite, shared to do, shared to do, shared to do will be fine for the description, script setup, Sass with SESS. We're going to use Pina in this, and of course linting. I don't like using Prettier, so we'll say no to that, and we'll use pnpm to go ahead and install those dependencies. And by the way, I'm going to be doing these live streams in little chunks where I get time. My partner is going to be home soon, so when she gets home, I'm going to have to stop streaming, but let's see how far we can get. So shared to do, and we'll go ahead and open that in code. Now, let's install the app extension. So Quasar extension add, whoop, what went wrong there? Quasar extension add at VueAuth/auth. So this is an app extension I've built to make it really easy to set up authentication with Quasar. So we give that a second to set up, and we can choose our auth provider. We're going to use IndexedDB, which is kind of like local storage but more advanced, and it basically means we can store authentication data on the user's computer. Not for production, just for prototyping. And I believe this is something that I recently fixed. Yeah, okay. But it looks like it hasn't picked up my published changes on pnpm. That's all right, that's fine. Oh, sorry, on the npm registry. So if we come in here, yeah, I got a little error that I've got here that I recently fixed, and I might not have published it. It's this .x part. Oh no, that looks good. Interesting, why is that failing? The latest VueAuth core. All right, we can just hard code it to a version for now. That'll be fine. Yeah, so it's this part here where we install VueAuth core. Doesn't like that that little star sign. So if I hover over that, we can see the latest is version 2. That's all right, let's just go 2 so that we can push on. And there we go, that's been installed. And if we jump into our source directory here, you can see we get a few things. We get an auth layout. We get some composables for working with authentication. We get a few components for working with authentication. And we get a boot file. So let's go ahead and get that boot file set up. I'll jump into our Quasar config, and inside of boot, we want to use VueAuth. And there we go. And now if I come down to app.vue, I'm going to cut that because I like my script to be at the top. Usually I've got a linting rule for that, so maybe we can get that installed later. Authenticate routes. Now we need to get this imported, so let's import authenticate. Wonder if it'll come up in my IDE. Nah, looks like it's not. And that's going to come from at VueAuth/Quasar app extension auth. There we go. This basically means that if you go to the login page and you're already logged in, it takes you to the dashboard, and vice versa. So if we jump into our auth routes file here, which is another thing that got generated for us, basically that means that we can use this meta tag here to say, hey, the register route is only for people that are unauthenticated. And if we come down here, things like the dashboard are only for people that are authenticated. Dashboard, I don't know why I said that funny. I'm trying to get through stuff quickly. Okay, so another thing we need to do is jump into our routes file and then use the auth routes that were generated for us. ... auth routes. Can I auto import that? Yep, there we go. So now those auth routes are going to be used, and I think that might be it. Let's have a go at this and see what happens. Quasar dev. And when that opens up in my browser, I'll just throw it over there. And let's make things a little bit cleaner now. There we go. And this is just the index page you get by default with Quasar. So I left that untouched just in case people had some stuff they'd already started working on. And we're going to go to /login. There's our login page that we get for free. And there's our register page. So I'm going to put my name in here. My email. And my password, which I will set to password. Register. And then that's registered account for me. And if I open up my console here, let's just create a bit more space. And we go to application, IndexedDB. You'll notice that we've got basically a new database here where I can store all of my users. And yes, the password is stored in plain text. So you need to make sure, again, this is just for prototyping. Okay, so that seems to be working fine. We've also got some other stuff we get for free, like changing the password. So we can change that from password to secret, update, and now that's changed. And then, of course, we can also log out. We've even got password resets as well. So if I put in my email here, let's see if I can remember how to do this. And then we open up our console. In local storage, it actually gives us a password reset token. So if you want to build some sort of like a dummy email in your front end that you can then show the user, hey, this is what the email would look like. And then you can use this value in local storage in order to set that password. So I can't remember what the route is here. I think it might be like reset password. Yeah, here we go. It's something I did earlier. And then for the password reset token, we can basically just take this value. So let's paste that directly in there. And is it reset password? Maybe it's not. All right, so I'll come back in here, jump into my auth routes. Oh, password reset. I got it the wrong way around. Okay, so let's go here. Password reset. And this is all stuff that would be documented anyway. Yeah, there we go. So now the token has been passed through, the email as well, so that it gets auto-filled. And then let's change it to something like, I don't know, password 1. Reset or change password. And there we go. It worked. So you get like a fully fledged login system, but everything is using IndexedDB so that we get this like really cool experience. Basically, we get to develop an app without a backend and authentication that doesn't use a real backend. Really, really cool for prototyping. Okay, that's the first piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is we need to be able to work with data without having a backend. So again, we can use IndexedDB for that. And I built some really cool tooling around this as well. So if we say here, hey Quasar, for an extension, I want to add at VueModel/VueModel. Give that a second to run. I wonder if we'll get a similar error to before. Okay, I might be doing something different there. And currently we have IndexedDB and Laravel Orion. We're going to use IndexedDB. There we go. That's already run. And I like setting this so that it doesn't show all of these errors by default. Let's see if I can remember how to do it. So I believe it's under like, here we go, Veep plugins. You can say like something about overlay. So overlay, and I think it's like initial open, and I can set that equal to false. Let's see if I got that right. Give it a second. Nah. Oh, bugger. All right, I'm going to do some quick Googling to figure out what this is. Because it really drives me nuts, that thing. But it's super, super helpful as well. So what would it be under? Here we go. Initial is open. So for that overlay, I was one word out. Initial is open. Let's refresh the page. Give it a second. We should get a little icon here. Yeah, there we go. So all the errors show up in that icon. I'm really not worried about TypeScript errors. We just want to sort of push on and get some stuff built. Okay, so now we've installed VueModel. We get this models directory. And this is basically like defining what's going to go inside of our database. And one thing we have to do, unfortunately, is to enable experimental decorators. They make it really, really easy to define these models. So I want that enabled. And to do that, I'll go into my tsconfig. And then I believe it's under compiler options, experimental decorators. We'll set that equal to true and save it. And there we go. Now we don't get those type errors anymore. Okay, so we've got a user set up by default. And by the way, whenever you see this icon, it's basically like saying, this is where you dive in. That's kind of a little joke there because it's someone with a snorkel. So dive in and start here. And whenever files are generated, you can just look for that and sort of know where to start. Okay, so this is going to be a to-do app. So let's just start with some basic to-do stuff. First, we want to be able to create a to-do. So I'm going to make a little create button down here that creates a to-do. We want to model our to-do. So I'm going to come in here and say Quasar. And if we say VueModel / VueModel, Quasar basically allows app extension developers to create their own CLI tooling. So I've created one where we can say make model, and this will be called to-do. And that goes ahead and then creates a to-do for us. And it's making that using a stub file. So if you go into stubs, you can see we got this model stub, and you can basically edit that so that it's how you would like it. And yeah, this is what we get by default. All right, so we've got an owner ID. The reason we have that field is because it's automatically set up so that all of your data gets filtered by the owner ID. So when you log in to different accounts, only the data that you own is going to be shown up. And if you want data that shows for everyone, you can just get rid of that field and then it'll show for everyone. So this is a really, really cool feature. And then I show you how to do a has-many relationship because that's something that you'll likely want to do. And yeah, so let's go ahead and give a title to this to-do. Again, we're always looking for that little snorkel to know where to get started. And then how about we also add a Boolean, and we'll set this equal to completed. So that's going to be a Boolean, and we'll let that be null as well. Okay, so we've mapped out what our to-do looks like. Let's jump into our dashboard. So we've got this dashboard page. I'll quickly show you the structure here. Pages, dashboard, and this is where we can put our authenticated stuff. So only the authenticated users can see the dashboard. Okay, so we're not starting in the index page, we're starting on the dashboard. All right, so let's go ahead and start writing some code here. We're going to dive into this section and say const to-do service, that's what I like to call it, is equal to use model. Now, unfortunately, when I created this, use model didn't exist. Now, it does exist inside of Vue, so I've basically stolen one of the names that Vue uses. Luckily, you're very unlikely to use Vue's use model because usually you would use define model, which essentially uses use model behind the scenes. Okay, so let's get that imported, and then we can just pass the to-do through to that. So we get that imported as well. And now we've got everything we need to start working with to-dos. Oop, and there's one thing I forgot. If we go to our config file, we want to make sure that in our boot, we have got VueModel. Because when we installed that app extension, we got VueModel, this VueModel boot file. All right. So what's next? We've got to-do service. We want to be able to create a to-do. So I'm going to create a sticky button down the bottom right here. Queue, page, sticky, butterfingers. All right, and I'm just going to do ... here so I can see that it appears, and there's our page sticky. And then I'll come up here and say position is equal to bottom dash right, and then we'll give that an offset equal to 1212. So just so that it pushes out by 12 pixels, maybe something a little bit more, like 2222. Yeah, that'll do. Now let's change this part to a Q dash button. And now Quasar's got this awesome fab, which basically adds all of the styling for a fab button. So there that is. And then we can use the default library we get from Quasar and add there. Now I'm not getting formatting here, so I'm going to go into my ESLint config, and I want some stricter formatting rules. Instead of essential, we're going to change this to recommended. And now when I save this file, I just get a little bit of extra formatting. Okay, so when you click on this, what we can do is we can use this to-do service and say creator, which is kind of like a subcomposable. So this is a composable with a composable in it. And we want to say creator dot, oh man, that's annoying. It's kind of covering the screen. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on there. Dot control space. All right. Creator dot create, and then we can pass it some data down. So let's go ahead and we get auto completion, which is really cool. We'll set completed equal to false by default. And yeah, I think that's about it. So now when we click on this button, I'll click on it a few times, jump into our application, jump into IndexedDB. There it is there. We can see this is actually saving that to do on the user's computer. There it is. And it's setting the owner ID equal to the authenticated user's ID. So it's really, really easy to be able to filter data. And I'm also doing some stuff behind the scenes to automatically filter this data. So when we start fetching the to-dos, it will only fetch your to-dos. But I'll show you that kind of stuff later on. I just want to push on for now. Okay, so we got that button. We know that it creates to-dos. Now we want to be able to actually show those to-dos. So I think I'll show that in a queue list. Let's add a queue item, and then a queue item section. And then I'm probably going to want something on the right of that list. So let's add a side item there. We'll just put the word side in for now. And then this will be where our item is. All right, so something like that. And now under to-do service, we can say v-4 is equal to to-do service dot, where is my auto completion? Let's try reloading the project. I need my auto completion. That didn't work. Restart Vue and TypeScript. Man, it's going to be frustrating without it. Unless have I done something wrong here? Pretty sure my syntax is fine. If I hover that, yeah, we get autocomplete. Oh, okay, it's because of the way I've started writing this out. So let's say form details in to-do service dot updater dot forms. Now this might be a little bit confusing when you first look at it. Why are we fetching our data through forms rather than some sort of an indexer? That'll make a little bit more sense later on. So we can now say for the key form details, and we can get the ID out of there. By the way, there are some better ways of writing some of this stuff, which I'm going to show you a little bit later. Pretty sure the ID property does exist. Okay, so this is actually forms.value because it's a ref. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap this in a reactive because it just makes it a little bit easier to use it in the UI. So now I can say form details dot, and now we can see we get ID there. All right, so there's all of our items showing up. Now another thing we can do is just spit out here form details dot form, and then the title. Okay, none of these have titles yet because we added them, but we didn't add a title as we were adding that to-do to the list. And on the side here, we're going to have a button where you can delete it. Let's set the size equal to small. We'll set the icon equal to maybe delete. Is that the icon? Yeah, there we go. And then we'll make it flat and round. And how about we set the color equal to like an understated red? Yeah, 3, maybe even like a 2 there would be good. No, like a 3. Okay. So that's looking good. Let's clean up our code a little bit here. I like to code things using all of the context to begin with, so you can sort of follow along with what's happening. But now I think we're ready to sort of make things a little bit simpler. And we're going to pluck out of to-do service the creator and the updater. And that means I can come down here, and instead of saying to-do service.creator, we can just say creator there. And we can change this to updater. And now instead of form details, I'm just going to pluck directly out of there the ID and then also the current form that we're on. Okay. So that just reads a little bit nicer. And now what we can do is make it so that we can model the title here for the form. So let's make this a Q input. I'm going to make this dense. We'll make it filled. And then we'll say VueModel is equal to form.title. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And now if I say change here, we can see that works. But if I refresh the page, of course, nothing happens. And I'm going to show you two ways that we can now do an update. We can say when you blur this input field, then I want you to take that updater and then call update. And it's going to update every single form that's changed. So you can actually change multiple forms all at once, and then it basically does a batch update. So let's give that a try. New value, blur, refresh the page, and it's worked. However, there's kind of a nicer way to do this. We can add an auto update to here, and it does depend on the use case. In this case, I think an auto updater really does make sense. And so we're going to jump into the options, specifically the update options. We'll set auto update equal to true, and then we'll set the auto update debounce to something like 250. I think that's probably a good value to put there. And now let's show a spinner for when it's updating, and we could say loading is equal to, and then we want to see if the current form is currently updating. And there we go. And let's make that change. And you can see we got that spinner for a second there. And one thing we're actually doing is using local storage behind the scenes in order to get that spinner. I'll show you what I mean. If we jump into VueModel.ts, where is it? We've got like a mock latency here. And it tries to find mock latency milliseconds, otherwise it sets it to 150, okay? So we can basically put in a fake latency, which makes it easy to test spinners. So if I add in here mock latency and I make it something like 1,500, I'm basically just trying to make it really easy for developers to play around with this stuff. So if I refresh the page, it takes a little longer for it to load the list. And then if I say again there, you can see we get that spinner for a little longer, 1.5 seconds. I'm going to change that back to 150. Now you know about that. Let's push on. Close that out. Make a little bit more space here. We got our delete button. What about our checked button so that we can say when something is completed? Q-checkbox. And we'll set the VueModel there equal to form dot. And where is it? Whether or not it is completed. All right, that layout kind of looks crap. So let's put all of this inside of a div. And then for that div, we'll give it a class equal to row, and then items center to make sure everything's centered in that row. Yeah, you have to do item center, otherwise the button ends up getting stretched a little bit. Long story why, doesn't really matter for the scope of this video. Well, let me just let my dog out. There you go, doggo. Okay, so let's just add some values into some of these and check that it's all working. Let's refresh the page so that local storage is updated. Yeah, it's just so that everything sort of updates quicker. And let's tick a couple of these, refresh the page, check that it's all working. And it is. So now we can hook up that delete button. So let's pull out of the to-do service the destroyer. And we come down to this delete button. Where is it? Oh, by the way, let's add a spinner here to add. Loading is equal to creator.creating. Save it. And now when we add one, yeah, we get a spinner. That happened a little bit quick, so it's hard to see. But you can change that local storage value and then refresh the page if you want to see for yourself what that looks like. Okay, so we want this delete button to work. So how about we say when you click on this button, I want you to take the destroyer and then destroy a resource with that ID, which would be, oh, we can just pull the ID out because it's being directly pulled out here. So yeah, that's it. We just destroy it. And we can put a loading spinner on that and say destroyer dot destroying. Yeah, these APIs are really, really nice. And what it actually gives you there is the ID of the thing that it's destroying. And for that reason, I'll just coerce this to a Boolean. So let's delete a couple of these. And it's working. Except, I see. So what we want to do is we want to say loading is equal to, and then check if destroying is equal to the ID of the thing that we're currently destroying. Yeah, that makes more sense. So let's try that. There we go. Now the spinner just shows up in the right place. And to test this properly, we can just put this up to something like 1,000. Refresh the page. And now we can see that spinner works nicely. All right, that's pretty cool. So I'm pretty sure my partner's just arrived home, but I think that's a pretty great place to stop it. So hopefully that gives you an idea. This is just scratching the surface of what we can do. I want to give you a little bit of a taste of what else we can play around with. So the updater has an indexer on it, which is what's used to actually fetch the resources that it will be updating. And there's lots of stuff we can do on the indexer. So we can say, for example, with, and then we can include any relationships such as the owner. And then we can filter that owner by email. And then we could say, for example, whether email contains, is between, equals, etc. So all of that kind of good stuff we can do. We can use with there. We've also got lots and lots and lots of advanced filtering as well. So we can make that a function that returns all of our filters. And we could say filter by the owner. So we've got nested filtering. And I want to know where the owner's name is equal to. So we could say equals Luke, something like that. There's lots and lots of really cool things that we can do here. And as you can see, nothing's showing up now because we don't have an owner that's got a name equal to Luke. So yeah, there we have it. We'll leave it at that for now. Later on, I want to add lists so that we can have multiple lists. Very nice example. Great pacing for the stream. Thanks. Yeah, I got a tendency to go a little bit slow and over-explain things. So I'm trying to get into the habit of pushing forward a little bit. Streams, I think, are a bit different to tutorial videos where, tutorial videos, you want to take your time, make sure people understand. In streams, I think people just want to see shit happening. Yeah, so next up, in the next stream, we're going to make it so that on the left side here, we've got all of our to-do lists. And then when you click on one of those lists, it's going to basically filter your to-dos based on what you clicked on in the list. And then when you press the create button, it's going to create a button that's got the right, a list, a to-do item that's associated with the right list, right? And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to have another account so that you can register. We're going to make it so that we register a second account, and then you can right click on one of your lists and then say share. And then you can choose a user that you would like to share your list with. And then users can basically share lists with one another. And then that's probably where we'll stop it. And then I'll move on to another project. Wanted to start with something really simple to begin with. And even though it's simple, there are actually a few complicated things that we need to be able to do. Like being able to have one computer without a real backend that has multiple lists that you can kind of share across, share between registered accounts. There's a little bit to it, and it's going to show you how you can very easily prototype things quickly that you can then show people. And that's the ultimate goal here, to be able to talk to someone, them come up with an idea, and you can say, hey, I'm going to prototype that. Let's see what I can come up with. You go home, within a few hours, you've prototyped it. You can push it to the web. You don't have to push a backend or anything. So you can literally just go into Netlify, push it up there, and then they can have a go at this. And again, everything just ends up on their computer through IndexedDB. So they get their own sort of list of to-dos, their own list of users, and stuff like that. So it's really, really great for building stuff that other people can sort of test out. And then when you're done, and I promise I'm going to finish up in a moment here, then when you're done, later on, you'll be able to swap out what you're using on the back end. So currently I only support Laravel Orion, but I want to support other things like Supabase and Strapi, stuff like that. But you'll be able to come in here and basically change the driver from IndexedDB, right? In other words, a user's computer. You'll be able to change it from that to something like Supabase or something like Laravel. And it's the same with VueAuth. So you'll be able to jump into your boot file and then change it from IndexedDB to something like Supabase or Strapi, etc. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next stream where we